I now recognize the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Floyd, I have a brother, too, whom I love very much, and I cannot imagine your pain right now. My heart goes out to you, and I want to just say you've been a wonderful brother to your brother and a great citizen today. So thank you for sticking with us. Professor Butler, the whole point of the social contract is that we'll be safer inside of it rather than outside of it in a state of nature or state of war. That's why our Constitution protects life, liberty, and property against arbitrary deprivation by the government. Now, this legislation that we're looking at today, the Justice and Policing Act, will ban chokeholds, strangleholds, no-knock warrants, racial and ethnic profiling. It'll criminalize lynching. It will end the militarization of local police departments. It creates a national police misconduct registry. It strengthens the standards of police accountability. My question for you is, given that you're someone who studies this for a living and teaches about it, is the social contract working for African Americans today with respect to policing? And if not, will this legislation actually vindicate the value of human life that members on both sides of the aisle have spoken about?
Indeed, Congressman. I was so moved by Mr. Johnson's introduction when he talked about the dignity of every human life. And then we heard Ranking Member Jordan echo Mr. Floyd's heartfelt plea that life is precious. The Justice Act of 2020 reaffirms the sanctity of life. It establishes national standards for when the police can legally kill people and requires officers to employ de-escalation techniques. The Act states that cops can only kill people as a last resort and requires them to try to de-escalate the situation before resorting to deadly force. This is common sense, but it's not the law now.
Thank you. Ms. Gupta, do you agree with Mr. Crump that we should impose the traditional doctrine of respondeat superior? Let the master answer for the employee on police departments so that they have the proper incentives to carefully train and supervise and monitor their officers?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Eiffel, Mayor Morial spoke of the history of lynching and racism and the cycles of American history, and there have been two other moments in our history when America moved aggressively to try to transcend the original curse of violent white supremacy. One was Reconstruction, which lasted 12 years after the Civil War before it was undone by racism. And the second was the modern civil rights movement, the so-called Second Reconstruction, when the blood sacrifice of Dr. King and Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman and Medgar Evers and Bob Moses and our colleague John Lewis and many others gave us the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And this civil rights movement, this Second Reconstruction, also faced a violent backlash. What are our prospects for a third and enduring Reconstruction today, Ms. Eiffel? What needs to happen for us to transcend the nightmare of racist violence and injustice that we seem to have been trapped in?
Well, thank you. Well, for purposes of this hearing, every member of this body has to take responsibility for what is happening in this country and decide that they will put behind them their election prospects, their sound bites for Fox News or for any other news network. They have to decide that they want to get their hands around this problem. And that means working together to try and solve what the people in cities in every state in this country have told them over the last 2 weeks is a problem that people will not tolerate anymore. It takes courage. It is going to take a lot of work for all of you in that body to come together. But this bill has provisions that I believe you can agree on from what I've heard today. And I would encourage people to read the bill. This bill does not repeal qualified immunity, for example. It actually changes the standard that courts have distorted over time. Read the bill. There is nothing in this bill that should be objectionable to anyone who cares about public safety truly, who cares about anti-discrimination and pledges themselves to it, who cares about the rule of law, and who cares about this country, and who believes, as many have said today, that they owe something to Mr. Floyd and his family, and even to Ms. Jacobs and her family, because police officers are made unsafe by the current system.
Thank you.
I would encourage people to read the bill, and I would encourage people to step up with courage, not only in this body, but in state and local governments as well, and to decide that they want to work together to solve this problem that the people have said
Thank you.
cannot wait anymore.
Thank you, Ms. Eichfeld. Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request that I would like to propose, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
A number of our colleagues have denounced several episodes of violence that have marred the beautiful and massive nonviolent protests that are transforming America today, and I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the following articles: white supremacists and other extremists exploiting this moment in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, far-right infiltrators and agitators in George Floyd protests, indicators of white supremacists in just security, and Facebook removes nearly 200 accounts tied to hate groups encouraging members to attend protests over police killings, and that is in ABC News.
Without objection, and the gentleman's time has expired.
Our great senators. Hi, Chuck. He used to love me when I was a Democrat, you know.